The 1980s should have been science fiction's golden age. Studios were pouring money into ambitious ideas after Star Wars changed Hollywood forever. But something strange happened. Some of the most daring sci-fi movies of the decade completely bombed. Critics trashed them, audiences ignored them, studios buried them. And yet today, many of them are considered masterpieces. I'm Bob, this is the Sci-Fi Graveyard, and these are 11 sci-fi disasters of the 80s that refuse to stay dead. Let's get into it. Number 11, Blade Runner, 1982. In the summer of 1982, Ridley Scott was riding one of the hottest streaks in Hollywood. Alien had made him a household name, and the studio was convinced his next project would be another guaranteed smash. That project was Blade Runner, a moody, rain-soaked detective story set in a dystopian 2019 where genetically engineered beings called replicants were hunted by specialized cops. Harrison Ford had just come off Empire Strikes Back and Raiders of the Lost Ark. On paper, this was unstoppable. Behind the scenes, everything was falling apart. Ford and Scott clashed constantly. Ford later described the shoot as one of the most miserable experiences of his career, saying he felt like a prop being moved from mark to mark. The tension got so bad that Ford reportedly refused to speak to Scott during certain stretches. The real disaster happened in the editing room. The studio watched Scott's cut and panicked. Too slow, too dark, too confusing. They forced Scott to add voiceover narration from Ford, explaining the plot as it unfolded. Ford hated the idea so much that many believe he deliberately recorded it in the flattest, most disinterested voice possible, hoping the studio would scrap it. They didn't. They also tacked on a happy ending using leftover aerial footage from Kubrick's The Shining, showing Ford and his replicant love interest driving into green countryside. It completely undermined the entire thematic point. Blade Runner opened head-to-head with E.T. the Extraterrestrial. The result was a massacre. Audiences wanted the warm, hopeful alien, not a bleak philosophical meditation on what it means to be human. Critics were split. The box office was embarrassing. But something started happening in the years that followed. People couldn't stop thinking about it. Rutger Hauer's Tears in Rain monologue, delivered partly from lines Hauer wrote the night before filming, became one of the most analyzed moments in cinema history. When Scott released his director's cut in 1992, removing the voiceover and fake ending, audiences finally saw what the film was always meant to be. It was a revelation. Blade Runner went from box office disaster to one of the most important science fiction films ever created, influencing everything from Ghost in the Shell to Westworld to the entire cyberpunk genre. But Blade Runner wasn't the only masterpiece that summer destroyed. Number 10, The Thing, 1982. That same brutal summer claimed another victim, nearly ending the career of one of horror's most talented directors. John Carpenter had proven himself with Halloween and Escape from New York, and Universal gave him real money to remake the 1951 classic. Carpenter's version dragged the concept into pure nightmare territory. Set in an isolated Antarctic research station, the film followed men who discover an alien organism that can perfectly imitate any living thing. It doesn't just kill you, it becomes you. The paranoia that sets in once they realize any one of them could already be the thing is dread that burrows under your skin and stays there. The practical effects, created by 22-year-old Rob Bottin, were unlike anything audiences had seen. Bottin worked so relentlessly, he hospitalized himself from exhaustion. The creatures were grotesque biological nightmares, heads splitting open, torsos rupturing, limbs twisting into impossible shapes. Every effect was done practically with latex, rubber, and mechanical rigs. The chest defibrillator scene remains one of the most shocking moments in movie history, and it still holds up over 4 decades later with visceral power that modern CGI can't touch. None of that mattered in the summer of 1982. E.T. had opened 2 weeks earlier, and audiences wanted Spielberg's gentle alien, not Carpenter's shape-shifting monstrosity turning men inside out. Critics savaged The Thing. Cinefantastique put it on their cover with the headline, "Is this the most hated movie of all time?" Carpenter was devastated. He's spoken openly about how the reception sent him into genuine depression and made him question whether he understood audiences at all. Then, home video changed everything. Throughout the mid to late 80s, The Thing found its audience on VHS and cable. People who watched it alone, late at night, experienced exactly what Carpenter intended. Word spread. Repeat viewings revealed layers of subtle clues about who was infected and when. Fan theories multiplied. Kurt Russell's exhausted, paranoid MacReady became one of the great sci-fi protagonists. And that ambiguous ending, two survivors sitting in freezing cold, neither sure if the other is still human, became one of the most debated final shots in cinema. Today, The Thing is regularly ranked among the greatest horror and sci-fi films ever made. The fact that it was once the most hated movie of its year makes its resurrection even more extraordinary. Number 9. Tron, 1982. Disney in the early 1980s was a studio in crisis. The animation department was struggling, live action hadn't produced a hit in years, and the company was so vulnerable that corporate raiders were circling. In that desperation, filmmaker Steven Lisberger walked in with an idea so radical it should have been laughed out of the building. He wanted to make a movie set inside a computer, where programs were living beings and the digital world was a vast, glowing landscape. Personal computers were still a novelty most Americans had never touched. The internet wouldn't exist for another decade. Lisberger was asking Disney to bet millions on a concept the public had no frame of reference for. Somehow, he convinced them. What followed was one of the most technically ambitious productions in film history. Over 30 minutes featured CGI, an almost incomprehensible achievement for 1982. Teams at MAGI, III, and Robert Abel and Associates were literally inventing techniques as they went, creating digital environments frame by frame on machines with less computing power than a modern smartphone. The production also used backlit animation, where live-action scenes were shot in black and white, each frame enlarged, transferred to cells, and hand-painted with the neon colors that gave Tron its otherworldly look. Audiences didn't know what to make of it. The story of a programmer sucked into his own computer felt abstract and confusing. The visuals were striking, but critics found the emotional core cold. The box office was disappointing enough that Disney considered it a failure. Then came the real sting. The Academy refused to nominate Tron for Best Visual Effects. Their reasoning was astonishing. Using computers was cheating. The very innovation that made Tron groundbreaking was why the industry's highest honor rejected it. The irony has only grown more absurd with time. Every visual effects Oscar winner since the mid-90s relies heavily on technology Tron pioneered. Every Marvel movie, every Pixar film, every digitally enhanced blockbuster owes a debt to what Lisberger's team built. Tron didn't just predict the future of cinema, it built the foundation. When Disney greenlit Tron Legacy in 2010, nearly 30 years later, it was an acknowledgement that the original had been right all along, just decades too early for anyone to realize. But Tron's production troubles looked minor compared to what happened when another visionary director tackled the most ambitious sci-fi novel ever written. Number 8. Dune, 1984. Before David Lynch became one of the most celebrated filmmakers alive, he nearly had his entire career destroyed by a single movie. Frank Herbert's 1965 novel was considered the unfilmable book, a dense epic about politics, religion, ecology, and power set on a desert planet where a precious substance called spice controlled the universe's fate. The most legendary failed attempt belonged to Alejandro Jodorowsky, who spent years assembling a team including Salvador Dali, Orson Welles, Mick Jagger, and Pink Floyd for a 14-hour version that never got made. By the early 80s, producer Dino De Laurentiis offered the project to Lynch, fresh off The Elephant Man's 2 Academy Award nominations. Lynch was also being courted by George Lucas to direct Return of the Jedi, but turned it down, wanting to tell his own story. He chose Dune instead, a decision he would deeply regret. The scope was enormous. Massive sets were built in Mexico. Thousands of extras were hired. Over 1,600 crew members. The budget ballooned to roughly $40 million. The problems were fundamental. Herbert's novel runs on internal monologue, political intrigue, and world-building across hundreds of pages. Lynch tried compressing everything into just over 2 hours, producing a film that raced forward while feeling incomprehensible to anyone who hadn't read the book. Characters appeared and vanished. Subplots evaporated. The studio forced further cuts. Lynch was so unhappy he had his name removed from the extended television version, replacing it with the infamous pseudonym Alan Smithee, the name directors use when publicly disowning their work. Critics were merciless. Audiences stayed away. Dune earned barely half its budget and was declared one of 1984's biggest flops. Lynch rarely speaks about it, and when he does, the pain is evident. But Herbert's fans never abandoned it. The production design, the Toto and Brian Eno soundtrack, Kyle MacLachlan's earnest performance, all earned Dune a devoted cult following. When Denis Villeneuve's two-part adaptation arrived decades later to massive success, it proved what Lynch's version always suggested. The story was never the problem. It just needed room to breathe. But Dune's battle between artist and studio was nothing compared to what one director did next to fight for his vision. Number 7. Brazil, 1985. Terry Gilliam has never been easy for studios. The former Monty Python member thinks in surreal, sprawling images, completely resistant to neat packaging. But nothing prepared him or Hollywood for the war that erupted over Brazil, a conflict so vicious it became a defining battle between artistic vision and corporate control. Brazil was Gilliam's dystopian nightmare comedy about a bureaucrat named Sam Lowry, trapped in a retro-futuristic society strangled by paperwork, surveillance, and soul-crushing incompetence. Think Orwell's 1984 through absurdist, dark humor, where oppression is maintained not by evil geniuses, but bumbling idiots following procedure. The sets were extraordinary, enormous industrial landscapes crammed with snaking ducks. Robert De Niro appeared as an outlaw repairman, and the ending was devastating. Sam's apparent escape and romantic triumph was revealed as delusion, his mind retreating into fantasy while his body sat broken in a torture chamber. That ending ignited the war. Sid Sheinberg, head of Universal Pictures, believed American audiences wouldn't accept a hero losing his mind after being tortured. He wanted a happy ending. He commissioned his own re-edit, the infamous Love Conquers All cut. 94 minutes versus Gilliam's 142. Scenes rearranged, dark ending removed, schmaltzy romance stitched on. The satire was gutted. By every account, an unwatchable disaster. Gilliam fought back with everything. When private negotiations failed, he took out a full-page ad in Variety. "Dear Sid Sheinberg, when are you going to release my film Brazil?" A direct public humiliation of one of entertainment's most powerful men. He held unauthorized screenings for critics, building a groundswell of support. When the Los Angeles Film Critics Association voted Brazil Best Picture of 1985 for a film not yet officially released, Sheinberg's position collapsed. Universal relented. The theatrical run was modest. Brazil never became a blockbuster, but over the following decades, its reputation grew until it was recognized as one of the most important dystopian works in any medium. Its influence stretches across movies, television, video games, and political discourse. The Love Conquers All cut became a cautionary tale taught in film schools about what happens when studios sand the edges off visionary work. Gilliam won, but the fight cost him dearly. And the next film featured a director who had an even harder time convincing Hollywood his weird, brilliant vision deserved trust. Number 6. Big Trouble in Little China, 1986. John Carpenter could not catch a break. After The Thing's devastating reception, he made Christine and Starman to modest results. Then came Big Trouble in Little China, the final nail in his studio career, and, paradoxically, one of the most beloved cult films ever made. The concept was wild. A loud-mouthed truck driver named Jack Burton stumbles into a centuries-old supernatural conflict in San Francisco's Chinatown involving ancient sorcerers, martial arts, mystical storms, and a 2,000-year-old ghost wizard breaking a curse. The genius that 1986 audiences completely missed is what makes it endlessly rewatchable. Jack Burton, played by Kurt Russell with maximum swagger, believes he's the hero. He struts, delivers tough guy speeches, squints at danger. But he's not the hero, he's the sidekick. Wang Chi, played by Dennis Dunn, is the actual hero. He has the skills, the motivation, the competence. Burton mostly stumbles through, gets knocked unconscious at critical moments, and succeeds through dumb luck. Carpenter was deconstructing the American action hero 3 decades before it became fashionable, so subtly most viewers never realized. Fox had no idea what they'd bought. The marketing positioned it as a straightforward Kurt Russell action vehicle, meaning audiences expecting Commando got a supernatural comedy with Chinese mythology. The tone bounced between slapstick, genuine horror, martial arts, and philosophical monologues from ancient spirits. It fit no genre box. Opening against Aliens, it earned back a fraction of its $25 million budget. Carpenter has said it essentially ended his relationship with major studios. Then home video performed its miracle again. Audiences who discovered it on VHS found the movie they'd always wanted without knowing it existed. The dialogue became legendary. "It's all in the reflexes" entered the lexicon. Burton's swagger became iconic precisely because it was performance within performance. A man cosplaying as a hero while a real hero fought beside him. Dwayne Johnson spent years pursuing a remake, not because the original failed, but because its concept was ahead of its time. Edgar Wright and Tarantino cite it as foundational. Carpenter, despite the professional damage, calls it a personal favorite. The film that nearly ended his career proved he was always operating on a wavelength the mainstream hadn't tuned into. And the next film had the same problem, except it also got rated so harshly it nearly didn't reach theaters at all. Number 5. RoboCop, 1987. Nobody wanted to make RoboCop. The screenplay bounced around Hollywood for months. Every executive passed. The title sounded like a cheesy B-movie. Major directors turned it down. The script reached Paul Verhoeven, a Dutch filmmaker still relatively unknown in America. His wife read it first, tossed it aside, and called it trash. Verhoeven nearly threw it away. Then he picked it back up and realized what everyone missed. Underneath the absurd premise of a murdered cop rebuilt as a machine was razor-sharp satire of corporate America, media manipulation, privatization, and the commodification of human life. He decided to tell it with the most extreme violence possible. Peter Weller, who landed the role after numerous actors passed, wore a suit so heavy and restrictive he lost 3 pounds daily from sweating. It took over 11 hours to put on initially and required multiple redesigns before he could move. He compared the experience to being entombed alive. Weller committed fully, studying mime to develop RoboCop's mechanical movement, turning what could have been stiff into something genuinely haunting. A man trapped inside his own body, slowly remembering who he used to be. Then came the ratings battle. The original cut received an X rating, essentially a death sentence for distribution. Verhoeven submitted it multiple times, trimming frames each round. The ED-209 boardroom scene, where a malfunctioning robot shreds an executive while panicked businessmen dive for cover, was Verhoeven at his most provocative. Extreme violence played for dark comedy, the corporation's product killing its own employees, while the CEO worries only about the project timeline. Critics praised the action, but questioned whether satire justified the brutality. Others dismissed it as gratuitous trash. Box office was decent, but unspectacular. RoboCop was filed away as just another violent action movie. But viewers who revisited it started noticing details that felt less like fiction and more like prophecy. The fake commercials for nuclear board games, absurdly armed cars, vapid family sitcoms were savage parodies of Reagan-era consumerism that only grew sharper with time. The concept of a private corporation taking over public policing went from satirical exaggeration to actual policy debate. RoboCop wasn't predicting dystopia, it was documenting one in real time, dressed in chrome and fake blood. And the next film took that same corporate critique, but wrapped it in something even more unexpected. Number 4. They Live, 1988. By 1988, Carpenter had been burned so many times he'd stopped caring what studios thought. That freedom produced one of the most subversive mainstream films ever released. They Live grew from a short story about a man who realizes the world is controlled by aliens disguised as humans, using subliminal messages in every billboard, magazine, and broadcast to keep the population docile and consuming. Carpenter saw everything he wanted to say about Reagan-era America in that single premise. For his lead, he made a choice that baffled everyone. He cast Rowdy Roddy Piper, a professional wrestler with no significant acting experience, as the lead. But Carpenter understood something crucial. The protagonist, a drifter named Nada, needed to feel like a working-class everyman ground down by the system. Piper, who'd grown up in genuine poverty, had weathered authenticity no trained actor could fake. When he put on the sunglasses revealing the control system, obey, consume, conform, printed on every surface, skulls beneath politicians' faces, his reaction was raw and primal. The famous line about bubblegum was reportedly improvised, pulled from wrestling trash talk. Then there's the fight scene. 6 minutes. Piper and Keith David. Over sunglasses. No music, no editing tricks, just 2 men beating the daylights out of each other in an alley. It goes on so long it becomes uncomfortable, then absurd, then profound. David's character isn't fighting because the sunglasses are dangerous. He's terrified of what they might reveal. He'd rather take a beating than confront reality. Carpenter made it punishingly long to drive the metaphor home. South Park parodied it. Academics wrote papers about it. It remains one of cinema's most analyzed fight scenes. They Live earned roughly $10 million against $3 million, modest numbers. Critics treated it as a B-movie curiosity rather than political statement. But like everything Carpenter touched in the 80s, the true life began after theaters. Shepard Fairey adopted the obey imagery, turning it into one of the most recognizable visual symbols globally. Philosopher Slavoj Žižek devoted lectures to its themes. In an era of algorithms, targeted ads, and deepfake, They Live doesn't feel like science fiction anymore. It feels like a documentary with better fight choreography. But if Carpenter's film was too politically sharp, the next entry was simply too strange for anyone to explain. Number 3. Buckaroo Banzai, 1984. Try describing the plot to someone who's never heard of it. Within 30 seconds, you'll sound like you're having a fever dream. The main character is simultaneously a neurosurgeon, particle physicist, rock star, and comic book hero. He leads a team called the Hong Kong Cavaliers, his band and crime-fighting squad. In the first 10 minutes, he drives a jet car through a mountain into the 8th dimension, triggering an interstellar conflict with red lectroids from Planet 10, who've been hiding at a New Jersey defense contractor, all using the name John for reasons never explained. Peter Weller plays Banzai with deadpan sincerity. John Lithgow delivers a completely unhinged performance as the villainous Dr. Lizardo. Jeff Goldblum shows up in chaps and a cowboy hat. Writer Earl Mac Rauch and director W.D. Richter created something outside any genre framework. Science fiction, action, comedy, romance, and musical performance simultaneously, held together by pure confidence in its own absurdity. The film assumes audiences already know Buckaroo Banzai, as if previous installments exist. Characters reference events never shown. Relationships appear without backstory. The world-building rewards obsessive rewatching, but on first viewing in 1984, it was profoundly disorienting for anyone expecting a normal movie. Fox genuinely didn't understand what they'd purchased. Marketing was practically non-existent. How do you sell a film that's simultaneously parody and celebration of pulp adventure, taking its insane premise completely seriously while winking at the audience? The studio couldn't answer that, so they dumped it into theaters with minimal support. It earned roughly $6 million against $17 million. Definitive failure. But Buckaroo Banzai refused to die. The credits promised a sequel, Buckaroo Banzai against the World Crime League, that never materialized, and its absence became legend. The film found its people on home video, building one of cinema's most passionate cult followings. Dialogue was memorized endlessly. No matter where you go, there you are became a philosophical motto for an entire generation who felt mainstream entertainment had nothing for them. Kevin Smith and Tarantino cite it as a major influence. The film proved you could make something nobody understood on release and still create art that resonated for decades, if the vision was strange enough to stick. And if Buckaroo Banzai was too weird to categorize, the next film was so disturbing that audiences literally ran from the theater. Number 2. Videodrome, 1983. David Cronenberg had spent the 70s building a reputation as the most provocative filmmaker alive. His films explored the relationship between flesh and technology, desire and mutation. He called it body horror, and nobody else was doing anything like it. By 1983, he had enough credibility to secure financing for his most disturbing vision. Videodrome follows Max Wren, a sleazy cable programmer played by James Woods, who discovers a pirate broadcast showing apparent real torture. The signal carries subliminal transmissions, causing brain tumors that generate hallucinations. Or are they hallucinations? The line between reality and delusion dissolves completely, and Cronenberg never offers a handhold. The imagery remains some of the most disturbing in mainstream film. Max's body mutates. A slit opens in his abdomen, functioning like a VCR slot. Characters insert videotapes into his stomach. His hand fuses with a gun, flesh and metal becoming one grotesque weapon. A television screen breathes and pulses like living tissue. Debbie Harry appears in ways blurring broadcast and physical presence. Rick Baker's practical effects achieved visuals that feel less like movie magic and more like witnessing something that shouldn't exist. But Videodrome wasn't shock for shock's sake. Cronenberg embedded a thesis about media and consciousness so far ahead of its time, it's almost eerie. Prolonged media exposure, physically changing the viewer. The screen becoming an extension of the nervous system. Reality and mediated experience becoming indistinguishable. That was science fiction in 1983. In 2024, it reads like clinical diagnosis. Professor Brian Oblivion, a character who exists only as video recordings, having abandoned his physical body for mediated existence, predicts digital personas with uncomfortable accuracy. Universal had no idea how to market any of this. Trailers positioned it as straightforward horror, attracting fans blindsided by philosophical density. Mainstream audiences were repelled. Viewers walked out. Critics divided sharply. Videodrome earned roughly $2 million against $6 million, a high-profile commercial disaster. Its resurrection was gradual but relentless. Media theorists and technology scholars cited it throughout the 90s. The internet, virtual reality, deepfakes, and screen addiction vindicated Cronenberg's thesis with unsettling precision. The Wachowskis acknowledged its influence on The Matrix. "Long live the new flesh" became a transhumanist rallying cry. Today, Videodrome is studied not just as cinema, but as prophecy, a film that saw where humanity's relationship with screens was heading and showed us exactly how disturbing that destination would be. And the final film on this list was too powerful to stay buried, no matter how hard the industry tried to ignore it. Number 1. Miracle Mile, 1988. For nearly a decade, this screenplay sat in Hollywood purgatory. Written by Steve DeJarnette, it told the story of Harry, a young man who picks up a ringing payphone outside a diner and hears a panicked missile silo technician who dialed the wrong number. The message? Nuclear missiles have launched, roughly 70 minutes until they reach Los Angeles. Harry must decide whether the call is real, whether to warn anyone, and what to do with the last hour of his life. He's also just met the love of his life and hasn't even had a proper date. The American Film Institute named it one of the 10 best unproduced screenplays in Hollywood. Studios wanted it, but demanded changes. A big-budget action film, a major star, an ending where the hero saves the day. DeJarnette refused every offer. He waited years to make it his way. When he finally did, the budget was roughly $3.5 million. Anthony Edwards played Harry. Mare Winningham played Julie. Shot mostly at night on actual LA locations, giving it a neon-drenched anxiety bigger productions couldn't replicate. What DeJarnette created is one of the genre's most relentless experiences. Operating in near real time, once Harry picks up that phone, the tension never releases. The viewer shares his uncertainty. Was the call real? Diner patrons react wildly. Some panic, some dismiss him, some make frantic calls and get disturbing confirmation. The city unravels in small, terrifying ways. Traffic jams form, helicopters appear. People behave with the desperate irrationality of those who believe they're about to die. The love story gives the tension its emotional devastation. Harry and Julie barely know each other. They met at the La Brea tar pits the previous afternoon in a scene of gentle, awkward charm from a completely different film. That contrast is the point. DeJarnette wanted audiences invested in the possibility of their future, then forced to watch it evaporate minute by minute. Every obstacle feels like cruel theft of something precious. The ending is why the film endures and why studios feared it. The missiles are real, no salvation. Harry and Julie find each other and are together when the bombs hit. The final image, both sinking into the La Brea tar pits as the city is consumed, their bodies destined for preservation alongside prehistoric creatures, is one of cinema's most haunting conclusions. Love becomes fossil, proof something beautiful existed, even for an hour. The film earned almost nothing theatrically. Over the years, it attracted passionate evangelists who called it one of the most underrated films of the decade. Its willingness to follow its premise to its honest, horrifying conclusion remains one of the bravest decisions in science fiction history. I keep thinking about that last image from Miracle Mile. Two people sinking into the tar. The city gone. Their bodies preserved eventually as evidence that they were here. None of these films changed. Not a single one was re-edited between its theatrical failure and its later canonization. Except Blade Runner, and even that version had existed in Scott's head the whole time. What changed was everything around them. Audiences caught up. Technology validated what had seemed paranoid. The cultural conversations that made They Live and Videodrome feel fringe became conversations everyone was having. The films just waited. The directors, Carpenter, Cronenberg, Gilliam, Verhoeven, Lynch, DeJarnette, absorbed the failure in real time while the vindication was still decades away. Some of them never fully recovered professionally, even as their work got canonized. That's the part that doesn't resolve neatly. Being right too early doesn't protect you from the consequences of being dismissed. There's a film getting terrible reviews somewhere right now. A director reading coverage that makes them wonder if they've made a catastrophic mistake. Maybe they have. But maybe they've made something the world needs another 20 years to be ready for. The honest answer is that there's no way to know from the inside. You make the thing you need to make, and you wait. And sometimes the tar preserves you, and sometimes it doesn't. Hit the thumbs up if you got something out of this, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Graveyard if you haven't already. I'm Bob. See you next time.